The Zephyrian hegemony had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their massive ships moved between star systems like metal gods, and every species they met either joined them or disappeared. The hegemony believed they were bringing order to a chaotic universe. They had advanced weapons, faster ships, and more worlds than anyone could count. High Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominant Truth, looking at the holographic display of local space. The blue lights showed hegemony worlds safe and controlled, but there were new red dots scattered across the map. These were human colonies that had appeared in the last 50 years. The humans continue to expand into our territory, reported Commander Zalmoth, his scales shifting to a worried purple color. Intelligence suggests they now have 14 colonies beyond their home system. Vextar's four eyes focused on the largest red dot. New Geneva, the humans called it. The world had nearly 500,000 human settlers growing food and mining rare metals. It was also exactly 17 light-years inside what the hegemony considered their space. "Tell me about these humans again," Vextar said, his voice like grinding stone. "A young species, Admiral. They only achieved faster than light travel about 70 years ago. Their technology is basic compared to ours. They have maybe 300 ships total, mostly cargo vessels and colony transports. Their military fleet is less than 50 ships." Vextar nodded slowly. He had seen this pattern before. Young species discovered space travel, got excited, and started claiming territory that belonged to older, stronger civilizations. Usually a small demonstration was enough to make them understand their place. "What do we know about their home world?" "Earth. Single planet, about 8 billion inhabitants. They seem to value individual worlds very highly. Intelligence reports suggest they form strong emotional attachments to their colonies." This was perfect, Vextar thought. Species that cared too much about individual worlds were easy to control, destroy one colony, and they would abandon the rest to save what remained. "Admiral," another officer interrupted, "we have a message from the Hegemony Council. They want to know how you plan to handle the human expansion." Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Council was testing him. This was his chance to prove he could handle threats efficiently. "Send a fleet to New Geneva," he ordered. "Full battle group. I want overwhelming force." "What are your rules of engagement, Admiral?" Vextar thought for a moment. The humans needed to understand that the galaxy belonged to the hegemony. They needed a lesson that would stop their expansion immediately. "Complete destruction," he said finally. "Leave no survivors. I want every species in this sector to see what happens when they ignore hegemony territorial claims." 3 days later, Battle Group 7 arrived at New Geneva. The human colony had basic defenses, a few small patrol ships and some orbital platforms. The colonists tried to surrender when they saw the hegemony fleet, but Admiral Vextar had already made his decision. The attack lasted 6 hours. Hegemony ships used plasma bombardment to destroy the orbital stations first. Then they targeted the planetary defenses. Finally, they began systematic destruction of the cities below. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the human patrol ship, Vigilant. She watched helplessly as the hegemony fleet destroyed everything she had sworn to protect. Her ship was too small to fight back effectively, and her crew of 23 could not save 400,000 colonists. "Captain, we have to retreat," her first officer said. "There's nothing we can do here." Sarah looked at the tactical display. New Geneva was burning. Entire cities were gone. The hegemony ships were methodically destroying every human settlement on the planet. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them the hegemony killed everyone." The Vigilant escaped just as the hegemony fleet began broadcasting their message to the entire sector. Admiral Vextar himself appeared on all communication frequencies. "This is High Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian hegemony," his image said. "Today we have corrected a territorial violation by the species called humans. The colony world New Geneva has been cleansed of unauthorized settlers. This is what happens to those who claim hegemony space." The broadcast showed footage of the burning planet. Hegemony ships circled overhead like vultures, ensuring nothing survived. The message was clear. This could happen to anyone who challenged hegemony authority. Across the galaxy, species leaders watched the broadcast with fear and disgust. The Altarian Republic sent quiet messages of sympathy to Earth. The Centauri Federation offered to mediate between humans and the hegemony. Even the usually aggressive Krell Empire seemed shocked by the complete destruction of New Geneva. But there was no response from Earth. No diplomatic protests, no military threats, no communication at all. The human homeworld went completely silent. Admiral Vextar was pleased. The humans had learned their lesson quickly. Their silence proved they understood they could not fight the hegemony. "Shall we move against the other human colonies, Admiral?" Commander Zalmoth asked. "No need," Vextar replied. "They will abandon those worlds themselves now. Humans are emotional creatures. The loss of one colony will terrify them into retreat." The hegemony fleet returned to their main base, confident they had solved the human problem with minimal effort. Intelligence reports confirmed that human ships were leaving their outer colonies. Merchant vessels stopped appearing at neutral trading posts. Human diplomats recalled themselves from alien worlds. Everything suggested the human species was retreating back to their home system, defeated and broken. What the hegemony did not know was that Earth had protocols for exactly this situation. Plans made in secret, approved by leaders who remembered humanity's darkest chapters. The silence from Earth was not surrender. It was preparation. In the asteroid belt beyond Mars, hidden shipyards that had been built in absolute secrecy began working around the clock. Facilities that officially did not exist started producing ships designed for one purpose: war. The human government activated Emergency Protocol 7, a plan that had been developed since first contact with alien species. Every human beyond the Sol system received the same message: return home immediately. This was not a request. Within weeks, every human merchant, diplomat, explorer, and colonist was traveling back toward Earth. The galaxy interpreted this as proof of human cowardice, but it was actually the largest military mobilization in human history. Earth's leaders had studied every galactic conflict for the past century. They knew how other species fought wars. They understood hegemony tactics and technology. Most importantly, they knew that some enemies only understood overwhelming force. The destruction of New Geneva had crossed a line that humanity had drawn long ago. There would be consequences, but not the kind the hegemony expected. As hegemony forces began dividing up abandoned human colonies among member species, they had no idea that Earth was preparing an answer that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The silence from humanity was about to end, and when it did, the galaxy would learn that some species never forgive genocide and never forget those who harm their children. Admiral Vextar would soon discover that he had not solved the human problem. He had created a much larger problem for himself and everyone who served the hegemony. The countdown to retribution had already begun. 18 months passed since New Geneva burned, and the galaxy had grown used to human silence. Where once human merchant ships had traveled busy trade routes, now there was nothing. Space stations that had relied on human cargo found new suppliers. Diplomatic posts that humans had maintained were quietly abandoned. The hegemony took this as proof that their strategy had worked perfectly. High Admiral Vextar received regular reports confirming human retreat from the galaxy. The last human colony ship left the Kepler system 3 weeks ago, Commander Zalmoth reported during their weekly briefing. Our survey teams found the settlements completely abandoned. They left behind valuable mining equipment and established farms. Vextar nodded with satisfaction. And the other human worlds? All abandoned, Admiral. Intelligence estimates that fewer than 10,000 humans remain outside their home system, mostly on neutral stations. The rest have returned to Earth. This was exactly what Vextar had expected. Humans were emotional creatures who could not think strategically. One destroyed colony had convinced them to abandon everything they had built over 50 years. What about their military response? Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer. Nothing, Admiral. No military buildups detected. No new ship construction. Earth's orbital defenses remain at the same basic level they maintained before New Geneva. It appears they have accepted our authority. Around the galaxy, other species watched humanity's retreat with mixed feelings. Some felt relieved that the situation had not escalated into a larger war. Others were disturbed by how easily the hegemony had terrorized an entire species into submission. Ambassador Kree of the Altarian Republic tried several times to contact Earth's government. The Altarians had their own problems with hegemony expansion and had hoped humans might become useful allies. But every message to Earth went unanswered. Perhaps they are planning something suggested his aide during one of their discussions. With what? Cree replied sadly. They had 300 ships before New Geneva. Even if they have been building more, they could not match hegemony strength. I think the humans have simply given up. The Centauri Federation reached the same conclusion. Their military analysts studied the situation and determined that humanity had made the logical choice. Fighting the hegemony would result in the destruction of Earth itself. Better to retreat and survive. Even species that disliked the hegemony began to see human silence as cowardice. The proud Krell Empire, which had fought 3 wars against hegemony expansion, sent a message calling humans a disappointment to warrior species everywhere. But what none of them understood was the true nature of human silence. On Earth, the largest military mobilization in human history was taking place in absolute secrecy. Every space elevator was running at maximum capacity, lifting materials to orbital construction facilities. The asteroid belt hummed with activity as mining operations extracted metals faster than ever before. President Maria Santos stood in the command center deep beneath the Swiss mountains, watching displays that showed humanity's response to New Geneva. Around her, the best military minds on Earth worked around the clock on what they called the Retribution Project. Status report. General Hayes, she said to the gray-haired man beside her. Production is ahead of schedule, Madam President. We now have 8,000 ships completed, with 4,000 more in final assembly. Every facility is working at maximum capacity. President Santos nodded. The numbers were staggering, but they represented only part of humanity's response. What about personnel? We recalled every qualified human from outside the Sol system as ordered. Former merchant captains, colony ship pilots, exploration crews. Everyone with space experience is being retrained for military operations. We also activated the reserve conscription protocols. This meant that Earth was training millions of people for space combat. Factory workers who had built civilian ships were now building warships. Scientists who had studied alien cultures were now studying alien military tactics. Even children in schools were learning basic space operations as part of their daily education. Intelligence reports? Santos asked. The hegemony believes we have surrendered, replied Director Chen of Earth Intelligence. Their survey teams are claiming our abandoned colonies. They think human civilization has collapsed into isolation. Santos smiled grimly. Good. The longer they believe that, the more time we have to prepare. The president walked to another display showing ship designs. These were not the exploration vessels and cargo transports that humanity had built before. These were weapons of war, designed by teams who had studied every battle the hegemony had ever fought. The ships were built around a simple philosophy: overwhelming firepower and absolute commitment. Human engineers had learned that hegemony tactics relied on intimidation and superior numbers. So Earth would provide numbers that no enemy could match. Tell me about the fleet composition, Santos said to Admiral Rodriguez, Earth's most experienced military commander. Each battle group contains 400 ships, Madam President. 12 heavy cruisers provide long-range bombardment capability. 40 destroyers handle close combat and escort duties. The remaining ships are specialized for different tactical roles: electronic warfare, fighter support, logistics. Santos did the math quickly. At that composition, 12,000 ships means 30 battle groups, yes. Each one larger than most species' entire military forces. But the ships were only part of Earth's preparation. The recall of all humans from outside the Sol system had brought home more than people. It had brought intelligence. Every human merchant who had traded with alien species, every diplomat who had negotiated with foreign governments, every explorer who had mapped unknown space, they all contributed to humanity's understanding of galactic politics and military capabilities. Earth now knew exactly how the hegemony fought their wars. They knew which species supported the hegemony and which ones secretly opposed them. Most importantly, they knew that the hegemony had grown complacent after 3,000 years of easy victories. What about the other species? Santos asked. How are they likely to react when we make our move? Director Chen consulted his reports. Most will be shocked. Some will be frightened. The Altarians and Centauri will probably offer to mediate. The Krell might respect us more if we show military strength. And the hegemony itself? Complete surprise, Madam President. They expect humans to remain cowering on Earth for decades, maybe centuries. They have no idea we possess the industrial capacity for this kind of military production. Santos walked to the main display, which showed the current position of every human ship in the fleet, 12,000 vessels hidden throughout the Sol system, waiting for the order to depart. Each ship carried a crew trained for one mission: to ensure that what happened to New Geneva never happened to any human world again. "How long until we are ready?" she asked. 6 weeks, Madam President," General Hayes replied. "Final systems tests, crew integration exercises, and tactical coordination drills. Then we can begin deployment." Santos looked around the command center at the faces of Earth's leaders. These people had made the hardest decision in human history: to build a military force capable of fighting the most powerful empire in the galaxy. They had chosen overwhelming force because they understood something about human nature that other species did not. Humans never forgot genocide. They never forgave the murder of their children. And they never allowed such crimes to go unanswered, no matter how long it took or what it cost. The silence from Earth would continue for 6 more weeks. The galaxy would continue to believe that humanity had accepted defeat and retreated into isolation. Then, 12,000 ships would teach everyone the difference between human silence and human surrender. The hegemony had destroyed New Geneva to send a message about their power. Soon, Earth would send a message about human determination that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The secret began long before New Geneva burned. 20 years earlier, when humanity first made contact with alien civilizations, Earth's leaders had asked a simple question: what if we need to fight? The answer led to the Terra Defense Initiative, a classified program that most humans never knew existed. While Earth's public face showed peaceful exploration and trade, the TDI prepared for the possibility that humanity might face an enemy that only understood violence. Dr. Sarah Kim had designed the first TDI ships in a hidden facility on the dark side of the moon. She studied every piece of alien technology that human traders brought home. She analyzed battle reports from conflicts across the galaxy. Most importantly, she learned how the hegemony had conquered so many worlds. "They rely on intimidation," she explained to the TDI Council during one of their secret meetings. "Hegemony fleets arrive with overwhelming numbers and demand surrender. Most species give up without fighting because resistance seems hopeless. So how do we counter that strategy?" asked General Morrison, the TDI's military commander. "By making resistance impossible to ignore," Dr. Kim replied. "If someone attacks us, we respond with such overwhelming force that surrender becomes their only option." This philosophy shaped every aspect of TDI planning. Hidden shipyards were built throughout the solar system, disguised as mining operations or research stations. Manufacturing facilities were established on dozens of asteroids, each one capable of producing warships around the clock. Most importantly, Earth developed a distributed production network that could not be destroyed by attacking any single location. The TDI also recruited carefully military officers who showed exceptional tactical thinking, engineers who could design weapon systems, pilots who could handle complex space combat. But they also recruited people with specific knowledge of alien psychology and tactics. Captain Jack Morrison, the general's son, had spent 5 years as a merchant ship captain before New Geneva. He traded with dozens of alien species and learned their languages, customs, and military capabilities. When the TDI activated, this knowledge became invaluable for planning Earth's response. "The hegemony has fought the same way for 3,000 years, he explained to a group of newly recruited ship captains. "They arrive with massive fleets, destroy a few targets to prove their strength, then demand surrender. Most species surrender immediately because they cannot imagine defeating such overwhelming force. But we can imagine it?" asked Captain Torres, a former exploration ship commander. "We can do more than imagine it," Morrison replied. "We can build it." The TDI had studied human military history as carefully as they studied alien tactics. They knew that humans had a unique approach to warfare. When threatened with extinction, they responded with total commitment. World War II had proved that humans would sacrifice everything to defeat an enemy that threatened their survival. "The hegemony made a critical mistake when they destroyed New Geneva," explained Dr. Kim. "During a briefing 6 months after the attack, they assumed we would react like other species, that we would be intimidated into submission. Instead, they triggered our survival instincts. Earth's response went far beyond building ships. The TDI had developed new technologies specifically for fighting the hegemony, weapon systems that could penetrate hegemony shields, communication systems that could not be jammed by hegemony electronic warfare. Most importantly, tactical doctrines designed to counter every hegemony strategy. Admiral Chen Martinez commanded the TDI fleet from the battleship Retribution. She had studied every major space battle in galactic history and developed new tactics that other species had never seen. Hegemony fleets rely on formation, fighting, she explained to her battle group commanders. They advance in massive wedges using concentrated firepower to break enemy formations. Their tactics work because most species try to match them ship for ship. How do we counter that? Asked Admiral Singh, commander of Battle Group 7. We don't match them, Martinez replied. We overwhelm them. Hegemony battle doctrine assumes they will always have numerical superiority. When they face an enemy with more ships, their tactics become ineffective. The TDI fleet was organized around this principle. Each battle group contained 400 ships, but they were designed to fight as independent units that could combine for massive assaults. 30 battle groups meant that Earth could deploy 12,000 ships in a single operation, more than the hegemony had ever faced in one battle. But numbers alone were not enough. The TDI had also developed new combat doctrines that emphasized speed and aggression over defensive tactics. Human ships would close to short range and engage in brutal close combat, using superior maneuverability to avoid enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks. Most species try to minimize casualties in space combat, explained Captain Lee, the TDI's chief tactical instructor. They use long-range weapons and defensive formations to protect their ships. Humans fight differently. How do we fight differently? Asked a young lieutenant. We accept that ships will be lost, Lee replied grimly. We design our tactics around winning the battle, not saving individual vessels. This gives us advantages that defensive-minded species cannot match. This philosophy extended to crew training as well. Every human in the TDI fleet understood that their mission was more important than their survival. They were not fighting to protect their ships. They were fighting to ensure that no one would ever attack human civilians again. The training was intense and comprehensive. Pilots learned to fly their ships like fighter aircraft, using speed and maneuverability to survive in close combat. Gunners learned to target enemy weak points with precision accuracy. Engineers learned to keep weapons and engines running even after taking heavy damage. But perhaps most importantly, every crew member learned human military history. They studied the battles of World War II, where outnumbered forces had defeated seemingly superior enemies through determination and tactical innovation. They learned about Stalingrad, where an entire army had fought to the death rather than surrender. They studied the Pacific Campaign, where human forces had island-hopped across an ocean to defeat an enemy that seemed invincible. The hegemony thinks they understand warfare. Admiral Martinez told her captains during their final briefing before deployment. They have conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated thousands of fleets. But they have never fought humans. What makes us different? Asked Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Vengeance. Every other species they have conquered accepted that some things are more important than victory, Martinez replied. They valued their ships, their lives, their civilizations more than winning the war. Humans value victory above everything else. This was the secret that the hegemony would soon discover. Human military doctrine was built around a simple principle. Some enemies must be completely defeated, regardless of the cost. The destruction of New Geneva had marked the hegemony as such an enemy. As the TDI fleet prepared for departure, Earth's leaders made final preparations for what they knew would be the most important military operation in human history. They were not trying to negotiate or find a peaceful solution. They were not seeking territorial gains or political advantages. They were teaching the galaxy that attacking human civilians carried consequences that no enemy could afford to pay. The 12,000 ships now gathering at the edge of the solar system represented more than military force. They represented human determination to protect their own, human refusal to accept genocide, and human commitment to ensure that New Geneva would never happen again. Soon, the hegemony would learn that human silence had not meant surrender. It had meant preparation for a response that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The first sign that something had changed came from the deep space monitoring station at Proxima Centauri. Sensor operator Veltara, a young Zephyrian fresh from academy training, Noticed unusual gravitational fluctuations at the edge of the Proxima Nebula. Supervisor, I'm detecting massive distortions in Sector 7, she reported. The gravity readings don't match any known natural phenomena. Supervisor Krondar moved to her station, his 4 eyes scanning the sensor displays. The equipment malfunction? No, sir, I've run full diagnostics twice. The readings are consistent across all sensor arrays. The distortions grew stronger over the next hour. Other monitoring stations throughout hegemony space began reporting similar anomalies. Whatever was causing them was massive, larger than anything in their databases. On the hegemony capital world of Dominion Prime, Fleet Command received the reports with growing concern. High Admiral Vextar was summoned from his victory celebration to analyze the data. What am I looking at? He demanded, studying the holographic display that showed distortion readings from across a 50 light-year area. Unknown, Admiral, replied Chief Analyst Morgoth. The gravitational signatures suggest massive objects entering normal space from hyperspace, but the scale is unprecedented. How massive? If our calculations are correct, Admiral, we're looking at several thousand objects, each roughly the size of a heavy cruiser. Vextar felt a chill run through his scales. Several thousand ships was larger than any fleet in recorded galactic history. What species has that kind of military capacity? None that we know of, Admiral. The largest fleet ever assembled was our own second battle fleet with 800 ships. Before Vextar could respond, every communication system in hegemony space activated simultaneously. The message came on all frequencies, in all languages, broadcast with enough power to reach every inhabited world in the sector. This is Admiral Chen Martinez of the Terran United Forces. We are broadcasting on all frequencies to ensure this message reaches every leader in hegemony space. The image that appeared was a human female in a military uniform that no one recognized. Behind her, through the windows of what was obviously a ship's bridge, space was filled with more vessels than anyone had ever seen in one place. 18 months ago, forces of the Zephyrian hegemony attacked the human colony of New Geneva. 400,000 civilians were murdered in what hegemony leaders called a territorial correction. Today, humanity provides its response to that attack. The camera pulled back to show the full scope of the human fleet. Thousands of ships stretched in every direction, arranged in perfect formation. Each vessel bore the same insignia, a blue planet surrounded by stars, and each one was clearly designed for war. We have assembled 12,000 ships for a single purpose: to ensure that genocide against human civilians never happens again. Every individual responsible for planning, ordering, or executing the attack on New Geneva will face justice. Every government that supported or celebrated that attack will face consequences. High Admiral Vextar stared at the display in shock. 12,000 ships was impossible. No species had the industrial capacity to build such a fleet. The humans had been a minor power with fewer than 300 vessels total. This has to be some kind of deception, he said to his staff. Holographic projections, maybe sensor ghosts created by their technology. But deep space sensors throughout hegemony territory confirmed what the broadcast showed. 12,000 human ships had appeared at the edge of the Proxima Nebula, and they were moving toward hegemony space in battle formation. The Terran United Forces fleet carries one simple message, Admiral Martinez continued. Some acts cannot be forgiven. Some crimes demand absolute responses. The murder of New Geneva was such a crime. The broadcast shifted to show detailed footage of New Geneva's destruction. Hegemony ships systematically destroying cities while human civilians tried to evacuate. Orbital bombardments that turned farmland into wasteland. The final moments as the last human settlements burned. These images have been broadcast throughout the galaxy, so that every species understands what the hegemony considers acceptable behavior. Today, every species will see what humanity considers an acceptable response. Admiral Martinez stepped forward, her expression cold and determined. The Zephyrian hegemony has 72 hours to surrender every individual involved in the New Geneva attack. High Admiral Vextar, Commander Zalmoth, and every ship captain who participated in the massacre will be turned over to human authorities for trial. Vextar felt his blood freeze. They knew his name. They knew exactly who had been involved in the attack. If these individuals are not surrendered within 72 hours, the Terran United Forces will demonstrate why humanity has never forgiven genocide and never will. We will show the galaxy what happens when someone murders our children. The broadcast continued with tactical information that terrified military analysts across the sector. The human fleet was organized into 30 battle groups, each larger than most species' entire military forces. Each battle group was equipped with weapons and defensive systems that incorporated technology no one knew humans possessed. "We did not seek this confrontation," Martinez said in her closing statement. "For 18 months we remained silent while the galaxy celebrated our supposed defeat. We used that time to prepare a response that ensures New Geneva will never be repeated." The final image showed the human fleet beginning to move, 12,000 ships advancing in perfect coordination, their destination clearly the heart of hegemony space. 72 hours, Martinez repeated. After that, the Zephyrian hegemony will discover that attacking human civilians carries a price that no enemy can afford to pay. The broadcast ended, leaving stunned silence throughout hegemony space. On Dominion Prime, emergency meetings convened as leaders tried to understand how humans had hidden such massive military capabilities. "How is this possible?" demanded Chancellor Drexvar, the hegemony's supreme leader. "Our intelligence reports showed human retreat and surrender." "They must have been building this fleet in secret for decades," replied Intelligence Director Yulgain. "Hidden shipyards, classified military programs, massive resource allocation that we never detected. Decades. They only achieved faster than light travel 70 years ago. Apparently they began military preparations immediately after first contact with alien species. The implications were staggering. While the galaxy saw humans as peaceful explorers and traders, Earth had been quietly preparing for total war. The retreat after New Geneva had not been surrender. It had been mobilization. High Admiral Vextar found himself in an impossible position. The hegemony had never faced an enemy with superior numbers. Their entire military doctrine was built around intimidating smaller forces into submission. Against 12,000 human ships, traditional hegemony tactics would be useless. "What are our options?" he asked his senior staff. "We could attempt negotiation," suggested Commander Zalmoth nervously. "Perhaps offer reparations for New Geneva." "The humans demanded surrender of specific individuals," replied Intelligence Director Yulgain. "They want you, Admiral, and me, and everyone who participated in the attack." "Then we fight," Vextar declared. "The hegemony does not surrender to threats." But even as he said the words, Vextar knew that the hegemony faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The humans had not come to conquer territory or gain political advantage. They had come to deliver justice for genocide. In 72 hours, the galaxy would discover whether the largest fleet in recorded history could back up its threats with action. The Zephyrian hegemony was about to learn that some species respond to attack not with fear, but with absolute determination to ensure such attacks never happen again. The 72 hours passed with desperate activity throughout hegemony space. Emergency fleets were assembled from across the Empire as leaders tried to match humanity's impossible numbers. The largest military mobilization in hegemony history managed to gather nearly 3,000 ships at Dominion Prime. High Admiral Vex Tar stood on the bridge of the dominant truth, watching his fleet prepare for battle. He had commanded hegemony forces for 20 years and won every engagement. But he had never faced an enemy that outnumbered him 4-1. "Admiral, the human fleet has reached the outer system," reported Commander Zalmoth. "They're maintaining formation and advancing at steady speed. Any response to our final negotiation offer?" "Nothing, Admiral. They have ignored every communication since their ultimatum expired." Vextar nodded grimly. The humans had rejected every attempt at diplomacy. They wanted only one thing: complete surrender of everyone involved in New Geneva's destruction. "All ships prepare for battle," he ordered. "We'll show these humans why the hegemony has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years." The hegemony fleet moved to intercept the advancing humans in the traditional wedge formation that had won countless victories. Heavy battleships at the center, supported by cruisers and destroyers in carefully coordinated formations. It was a formation that had broken enemy fleets across the galaxy. Admiral Chen Martinez watched the hegemony deployment from the bridge of the Retribution. Her tactical display showed enemy ships arranging themselves exactly as human intelligence had predicted. The hegemony was fighting the same way they had fought for millennia. "Hegemony forces are assuming standard defensive posture," reported Captain Williams, her tactical officer. They're trying to concentrate firepower and force us into their engagement range. Then we'll disappoint them, Martinez replied. All battle groups implement Thunder Run protocol. Across the human fleet, 30 battle groups suddenly broke formation. Instead of advancing in a single massive formation, they split into smaller groups that approached the hegemony fleet from multiple directions. Each group moved with speed and precision that shocked hegemony observers. What are they doing? Vextar demanded as his tactical display showed human ships scattering across the battlefield. This breaks every rule of fleet engagement. Traditional space combat involved massive formations engaging at maximum range, using concentrated firepower to break enemy formations. The humans were abandoning formation warfare entirely, instead using speed and maneuverability to close to short range where their superior numbers would be most effective. Admiral, multiple human groups are approaching from different vectors, reported the tactical officer. Our formation cannot engage all of them simultaneously. This was exactly what Admiral Martinez had planned. Hegemony tactics worked when both fleets engaged in traditional formation combat, but humans had studied every hegemony battle and developed counters for every strategy. Battle Group 7, engage their left flank, Martinez ordered. Battle Groups 12 and 15 attack their center formation from below. All other groups prepare for close assault. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. Human ships closed to ranges that other species considered suicidal, using their superior maneuverability to avoid enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks at point-blank range. Hegemony ships, designed for long-range formation combat, could not adapt to the chaos of close-range fighting. Human vessels swarmed around them like angry insects, striking from multiple directions before disappearing into the confusion of battle. Our center formation is collapsing, reported Commander Zalmoth as explosions bloomed across the tactical display. The humans are targeting our command ship specifically. Vextar watched in horror as his carefully planned formation disintegrated under human assault. Ships that had fought together for years were separated and destroyed piecemeal by human forces that seemed to anticipate every hegemony move. How are they coordinating so many ships? He demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Their communication systems are more advanced than our intelligence estimated. The truth was that humans had learned from studying every major space battle in galactic history. They had developed new communication technologies, new tactical doctrines, and new weapons specifically designed to defeat hegemony forces. Most importantly, they had trained their crews to fight with a desperation that other species could not match. Every human in the fleet understood that they were not just fighting for victory. They were fighting to ensure that genocide against human civilians never happened again. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship, reported the communications officer. Put it through, Vextar ordered. Admiral Martinez appeared on the main screen, her expression cold and determined. Behind her, the battle raged as human ships systematically destroyed hegemony forces. Hi, Admiral Vextar. This is your final opportunity to surrender yourself and your co-conspirators for trial. Continue fighting, and we will demonstrate what total war means to humanity. The hegemony does not surrender to terrorists, Vextar replied. Then you will discover that humans are not terrorists, Martinez said calmly. We are the species that ended the Nazi regime. We are the people who burned Berlin to stop genocide. We are the children of warriors who chose total victory over negotiated peace. The transmission ended as human forces pressed their attack with renewed fury. Ships that should have retreated after taking heavy damage instead continued fighting until they were completely destroyed. Human crews showed a determination that terrified hegemony survivors. Within 6 hours, the largest fleet in hegemony history ceased to exist as an effective fighting force. Of the 3,000 ships that had defended Dominion Prime, fewer than 200 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured by human forces that showed no mercy to those responsible for genocide. High Admiral Vextar died when the dominant truth exploded under concentrated human fire. Commander Zalmoth was captured when his ship's engines failed. Across the battlefield, every individual on the human target list was either killed or taken prisoner. But the human fleet was not finished. Admiral Martinez had made a promise to the galaxy, and humanity intended to keep that promise completely. All battle groups proceed to secondary targets, she ordered. Every world that celebrated New Geneva's destruction will receive a personal visit from the Terran United Forces. Over the following weeks, human ships appeared in orbit around dozens of worlds throughout former hegemony space. They did not conquer these worlds or harm civilian populations. Instead, they delivered a simple message to each planetary government. This world celebrated the murder of 400,000 human civilians. The message said, "Your leaders broadcast images of burning cities and called it justice. Today you learn what human justice looks like." The human fleet then demonstrated their capabilities by destroying military installations, government buildings, and industrial facilities with surgical precision. No civilians were harmed, but the message was clear. Earth could reach any world at any time with overwhelming force. Within a month, the 1,000-year-old Zephyrian hegemony had collapsed completely. Member species declared independence or allied themselves with other powers. The central government dissolved as leaders fled to escape human justice. Throughout the galaxy, species that had celebrated New Geneva's destruction found themselves reconsidering their positions. The Krell Empire, which had called humans cowards, sent formal apologies to Earth. The Altarian Republic offered alliance treaties. Even neutral species began treating humanity with new respect. The human fleet completed its mission and returned to Earth, where the ships were quietly placed in storage facilities throughout the solar system. They were not dismantled or scrapped. They remained ready, a reminder to the galaxy that humanity had built these vessels once and could build them again if necessary. President Santos addressed the United Nations General Assembly upon the fleet's return. "We did not seek this war," she said to the assembled representatives of humanity. "We did not want to become a military power that other species fear. But New Geneva taught us that some enemies only understand overwhelming force. The galaxy has learned that attacking human civilians carries consequences that no enemy can afford to pay. Our children are safe because we proved that humanity will never forget genocide and never forgive those who harm our people." The speech was broadcast throughout the galaxy, ensuring that every species understood the lesson of the Terran United Forces. Earth had the capacity for total war, but would only use that capacity to protect human lives. In the years that followed, no one attacked human colonies. No one threatened human civilians. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute unwillingness to let attacks on their people go unanswered. The 12,000 ships that had appeared from nowhere became legend throughout the galaxy. They proved that some species, when pushed beyond certain lines, respond not with surrender, but with total commitment to ensure those lines are never crossed again. Humanity had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Earth would always retaliate,